Hi, beautiful soul. This is Marie Mullen with House of Kellen, also known as the Spiritual Geek. Today is day 10 of our happiness challenge, and we're going to talk about vices and virtues and why they matter, right? So just to define them, a virtue is a light thought form. It's things like compassion, acceptance, unconditional love, tolerance, all these different vibrations that when you really feel them, when you can master them, are going to raise the vibration of you. And what'll happen is it actually brings you more in tune with your higher self, right? Because your higher self is up there connected to the universe. They know where you're going and they actually help you plan things. So it makes it so more virtues that you have when you get to your divine time, and it all happens a lot more smoothly. And virtues are really, that's one of the reasons why we come down here and why we do this whole human thing, right? Because the more virtues that we gain, the more that we can progress spiritually. And when I say virtues, I'm not talking about leading a virtuous life according to the Puritans, right? You don't have to. It's not all about self-sacrifice. So virtues are about bringing these different vibrations in, and they're learned different ways. Oftentimes, if you're carrying an ancestral belief that you have to learn everything the hard way, you have to suffer to learn. Sometimes we do learn these through really rough situations. So one of the other goals that we have in Theta Healing is to release you from those so that you can bring in the virtues without having to have the drama all the time. An example of how that can happen is I actually learned acceptance a really nice way. And I also learned generosity through a really beautiful way too. But acceptance was like a really big virtue for me to bring in. I grew up in a household where I felt like I was being criticized constantly. And so every time I get into a new relationship, I'd always be like kind of braced for like being criticized for what I wore, how I behaved, because that was sort of the pattern that I had as a child and also the pattern that I had in my early relationship. So when I got together with the partner that I'm with now, my first year of living here, I'd be like, when is he gonna start doing it? When is it gonna start? Right. And then and then one day I just realized, no, this is someone who 100% actually exudes the definition of acceptance, true acceptance, right? Tolerance is usually a virtue that we learn before acceptance. And tolerance is pretty much like, okay, I disagree with you, but I'm going to be okay with you, right? So tolerance is good, but acceptance is even better. It's like, I see you and I love you, right? So, and what happens is, so that was my first exposure, was it was being demonstrated to me in this really, really loving, subtle way. And as it grew, I learned how to have acceptance for myself and acceptance for others. Because it's not like you're like, oh, here's acceptance, and you've suddenly like got all of it that you need. There's so many different levels that we have of these different virtues. So the first step is going out and having it demonstrated to us and learning it through something like, okay, this is what it is. We can also do the downloads in Theta that will get you started. But what happens is that download, that beginning, that is just the start. What you want to do is go out and practice it. So once acceptance was shown to me through my partner, I'm like, okay, how can I be more accepting of those around me? Right? And as you practice with it, as you purposefully stay in the energy of that virtue, it's going to grow and grow and grow. And our goal is to master these virtues and to get really good at them. And it does take practice. It's not just having someone like me give you the download once and you've got it, right? Because our belief systems, everything in our energy, that is also a reflection of our actions, right? So the other opposite of that is your vices, right? And vices are an interesting thing. There's something that'll happen as people are gaining more virtues and you're getting lighter and lighter and your vibration keeps shifting. For many of us, there's a certain ceiling that we hit, a certain point, right? We're like, oh my gosh, I'm almost at nirvana. I'm almost at that feeling of oneness. And this is an ancestral thing that happens for many of us, where when we get too close to God, too close to perfection, too close to connection, this fear will come up. that, oh my gosh, this means my life is over. I've achieved perfection. I'm going to have to exit my body, right? And this is a super, super subconscious thing. And this is why sometimes when you go to retreats, or I've seen it with people who go to like the basic DNA, where sometimes they get really sick afterwards, right? Because it's their body, it's their soul retracting, be like, oh my gosh, you grew way too fast and we don't, and now this means you have to leave. And I'm just having too much fun. And so vices are one of the ways that we balance out our virtues, right? Because there is a part of us that's very deep, that's either ancestral or past life, that doesn't want us to grow too fast or get too close to God, because who are we to be one with God? And so these vices are how we bring our energy back down and ground us in this reality of this third plane existence. And what do we mean by vices? It's not like smoking and drinking. These are vices like resentment and fear and anger, right? The vices are your heavier thought forms, right? And so whenever we start to be a little, in our opinion, a little too spacey, disconnected, when we're super floaty, something will intrude. So this happened to me over the summer in a really interesting way. I went to Montana twice to do some more trainings with Fiona, and after I got my certificate of science, which was amazing, right? It's all about the impossible, right? And you're working through how do you really do things on a global scale. And that's why those classes are so much fun, right? But I came home from just filled with this world of possibilities. And apparently I needed some balancing out according to my subconscious, because when I came home, what had happened is my partner had forgotten to hit start on the dishwasher before he came out to meet me for my last few days of class. And so we came home to a kitchen filled with mold spores. And so immediate 4-day migraine, right? So there was something in me that was like, oh my gosh, Marie, you learn too much. You're going to leave your loved ones behind. Here, let's get really sick. Right. And so looking back, I can laugh and acknowledge that I've released all of that. So I'm able to go back to where I was before I came home and had that. So those are the vices and virtues and how they work. Again, this is a process, right? And it can be really, really frustrating if you're not aware of this back and forth that we do, when you're like, I've done so much work and like, why is my life the way it is? And it can just be that, that slight internal resistance, right, towards being too close to God. And again, that's just from our ancestors, right? So the more of that you release, and the more that you recognize that as you grow and learn, right, that you're always going to have your family and friends, that there's always going to be a support system around you, that you have nothing to fear as you grow. You will always have love as you evolve. So the writing prompts for today are really going to be to feel into what kind of virtues do you feel you have? Do you feel like you're really accepting? Do you feel like you have a lot of patience? And just to acknowledge those, right? And then you want to look at your life and be like, wow, which ones do I think I could use some more of? Right? And then I want you to acknowledge your vices. What are the things that you do to stop your own happiness? What are do you bring resentment in? Do you get really annoyed at people on Facebook? Do you try to pick fights politically, right? Is that how you bring yourself down? Right? And how do those affect you? So just be really, in this journal, again, it's just for you. Don't tell anyone. This is just for you to feel inside of, how do I balance myself out? All right, beautiful souls, that is today's recording, and we will see you next week. All right, bye-bye.